Today on the DML News Podcast, I've got a really good show for you. We've got two lawyers from Judicial Watch. We're going to be talking about everything from election integrity to gerrymandering to what Trump is doing with the executive orders and how Republicans are trying to take him down. So get ready, because we're all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. You are going to meet Christina, Bobb, and T. Russell Nobile. They are both part of Judicial Watch. They are both extremely smart people. Russell, better known as Russ, focuses in on election integrity. He's been doing a lot with the mail-in ballots and trying to fight on that whole front. And then, of course, you've got Christina. Christina is battling her own legal issues because she has ties to Rudy Giuliani and her trying to fix what took place in 2020. She also specializes in national security law. So as you could imagine, I'm going to have a lot of questions for her about things like executive orders that try to stifle the Muslim Brotherhood. With that said, we're going to bring them in now. And I want to welcome both Christina and Russ. All right, so Russ, I'm going to start off with you. You know, the big conversation right now is the midterms. We're not even close to the midterms, but you know and I know this stuff runs up on us real quick. And come January, February, the announcements are going to start to be made about who's running, who's not running, etc. And there is a massive concern right now that Donald J. Trump is going to get bombarded with blue, that we are going to lose the House. And I'm even hearing people right now say it's so bad that we're going to lose the Senate. We'll get to that part later in the conversation as to why that's a possibility from a political standpoint. But just from an election integrity issue, I hear and see online constantly people saying, why hasn't this administration done more to prove that 2020 was stolen? Why are we doing this gerrymandering stuff and then opening the can of worms for the Democrats to do it? Because as of right now, I don't know what the numbers look like, but with all the court cases, it could have wound up leading itself to a Democrat lead from the gerrymandering. So can you explain those two things? A, why haven't we done more, or are we doing stuff about the 2020 election? And two, you know, the gerrymandering stuff. Are we in trouble because of what Trump tried to do, or is that just a lot of online buzz?
Well, the way I always separate it is you have election integrity on one hand, which is sort of the process and how people vote. And then you have gerrymandering, and that's just raw political power, right? That's just how the seats allocated, how the constituents aligned. And from a gerrymandering standpoint, the Democrats have been doing it a lot better the last 30 years. And what they've been using is they've been using the civil rights laws to establish permanently protected districts, right? There's 435 seats in the Congress, right? And so if you can start out with 20 guaranteed seats for Democrats, they already got a 20-point advantage. And so the Democrats have been using the Voting Rights Act and civil rights legislations to create basically Democratic districts, right? And so, like, just for example, in Texas, recently we were able to help some colleagues of ours stop an effort by the Biden DOJ trying to create what's called a coalition district, which is basically a district of people aligned because they're not white and they vote for the Democrats, right? And so we stopped that. We helped a group of people stop that, and so that is being stopped. Obviously, like New England, you have a 40% Republicans in New England, and Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire and Maine, and they have no seats, right? Mm-hmm. So, in Texas, where Democrats have 40% power, or 40% votes, they have several seats. In New England, they don't, right? So the Republicans have gotten a lot more aggressive on that. The Democrats don't have as much fuel to respond with. The ruling in Texas that came out last week that people were very concerned about, that's already been stayed by the Supreme Court. There's too many problems with that to really go through. So I think the administration is doing a better job, and the Republicans are doing a better job of going after, evening out or neutralizing the gerrymandering advantage that the Democrats have been using.
Let me ask you a question about that before we go into the second thing. I shouldn't have loaded you up with so many questions at once. But when you talk, I did some reading on this before we started this. So in Texas, we tried to gerrymander things. And then am I right in saying that the judge came back and said you can't do it because of racial profiling?
In short, but I mean, the coalition district case I mentioned, where they lost attempting to do that, the DOJ came in and said, well, Texas has been creating coalition districts, and these are obviously done for racial purposes, and you can't intentionally create district for racial purposes outside of a civil rights violation. And so the DOJ sent a letter to Texas saying, there's some problems with some districts you created. You need to you should probably get rid of these. And so the Republicans redistricted. And then in a separate case on the other side of the state in El Paso, a 3-judge panel of federal judges said that by a 2-to-1 vote, that violated a different provision of the Constitution. But the Supreme Court has already stepped in and stayed that.
So when you take a look at the gerrymandering in general all around the country, I mean, Trump tried to initiate this move so this way it would be more favorable to him come midterms. And I think every conservative and pro-Trumper is like, you know what, the Democrats cheat all the time. Do whatever it is that you need to do. And then what happens is you hear about Proposition 50 in California, which I need you to explain to people what exactly that is. You see Proposition 50, and then you hear online that it basically evened things out. Is that true?
No, it helped the Democrats catch up more. But basically, Proposition 50, and I don't remember the timeline on it, but a decade ago, there was this movement through this country to create what's called independent redistricting commissions. Those are a farce. You can't get politics out of redistricting. It's just it's like trying to get blood out of surgery. It's just impossible. And anyone that knows anything about redistricting is inherently political, right? So that no one pays attention to it and knows anything about it unless they're politically engaged. So, 15 years ago or so, the state of California's voters approved a referendum that, created an independent redistricting commission. And in response to what's been going on recently, the state of California's leaders passed another proposed another resolution where the voters could approve a one-time deviation from it. So if you think about it, they said, we're going to no longer do political gerrymandering. And then as soon as somebody else does it, they immediately abandon that principle. But so they passed it recently. And so now there's an ongoing, review of potential redistricting plans in California to potentially eliminate some or all Republican districts.
All right, Russ. So then on the very simplest end, where does Judicial Watch see this all falling into place by the time that midterms come around? Are we going to be on a net even? There was no blood given either way? Or is Trump and the Republican Party going to be in a deeper hole than when this whole thing started?
It's hard to say because it's a moving target. I think there'll be a net gain by the Republicans. It's just a question of how many. There's a lot of states where Republicans are really sort of limiting themselves. And, they should just take Massachusetts's guide, right? Massachusetts, there are no Republicans in Massachusetts. There are more Democrats districts in Mississippi where I live than there are in Massachusetts. So, I think the net result will be a gain. It's just a question of how much and what the long-term effects of all of it are.
Another question, and then Christina, I also want you to give your 2 cents on this as well, because you were involved with the Trump administration. It feels like the Democrats are always kicking the Republicans' ass. It just you know what, I don't know how to say it other than if I'm sitting at a bar with these guys, I'm like, what's wrong with the Republicans? Why do we keep on losing out to these freaks with blue hair and earrings out of their friggin' lips? It's like, why can't, is it because we're splintered? Is it because, we just don't worry about things as deep? I don't know what it is, but it always feels like every punch we take, the Democrats come back, whether it's through the courts or through Congress, they just kick our ass. Why do I feel like every single time I'm getting my ass kicked? I mean, Letitia James is an example. The chick just basically committed mortgage fraud. If I did that, I'd be in freaking stripes right now in the county jail. Why is it that it always gets thrown out? Why do I feel like we're always getting our ass kicked?
Yeah, no, we do. Sorry, I don't know if I'm going to take this one, Russ. I know you originally texted you, but I so agree with you, and I'm so grateful that you say that. And this is why, in politics, people have a 2-year memory, right? Like they don't remember what happened before. Before Donald Trump came, Republicans were not the cool party, and we're rapidly losing that now. We only became cool when Donald Trump made it cool because he was saying the things that everybody was thinking. He was irreverent. He didn't play the political game. And so everyone's like, oh yeah, Republicans are cool now. They're not, and they never have been. And the reason they never have been is because they're the sidekick to the bully, right? The Democrats are the bullies. The Democrats are the ones bulldozing, doing whatever they want, getting whatever they want, demanding whatever they want. And the Republicans are their little bag man that's like, if I just give you my lunch or my lunch money, will you stop giving me a wedgie? And that's our politics today. And so you have a very, very weak Republican Party. You have the vast majority of Americans agree with the policy positions of the Republican Party, but the people in office got into office by not being as crazy as the Democrats. Well, at least I'm not as bad as the Democrats. At least I'm not. That has been the Republican platform for decades at this point. And it's so much so that Republicans are scared to do anything because all they are used to doing is not doing what Democrats do. And so you now have a completely impotent Republican Party that has no backbone. I'll be a little bit more PC on this, but they have no backbone to actually stand up and do what the Republican not just the Republican constituents, the Republicans overwhelmingly won the popular vote, and they're not doing anything to bring in what the people who voted for them do. And so that's why we're now at a point where Democrat constituents are not properly represented by the Democrat Party. I don't believe most Democrats agree with what the Democrat Party is doing. And we now have, that is also true on the Republican side. Republicans are also not being represented by the people who are electing them. And so we're in this weird kind of crisis where you have all of these political infighting, whether it's gerrymandering, whether it's criminal charges. And I will remind everybody, I'm currently a criminal defendant as we speak, but you have all of this political infighting at the top, and 330 million Americans are looking at this going, none of this has anything to do with me, and it's not helping my life, and I'm struggling. And I get it that you all hate each other, and you all want to throw each other in jail, or you all want to send each other to war, or you all want to, seize bank assets, or whatever the heck they're doing. But the Republican Party is completely impotent, despite the fact that they have the right policy for most Americans. And the Democrat Party is incredibly aggressive, but they don't have the support of the American people for their policies. So, sorry, I completely agree with you.
There's no sorry in that. And we're going to come back to something too, because I want to come back to the Letitia James, and I want to come back to you being a criminal defendant. But sticking on that moment for that momentum for a second, I'll go back to you, Russ, about the upcoming election. So my feeling was that there was going to be an enormous opportunity this Trump 2.0. And the reason being was that he had learned from the first 4 years. And secondly, although he truly does want to make America great again from what he believes great again is, I don't know if I necessarily align with those principles anymore. We can get to that more in the conversation. For instance, just park this so you know what my thought is. I don't see the value of doing AI deals with countries from the Middle East. So let's just put that to the side, okay? And everything to him is $1. It's $1. We're going to take in 600,000 Chinese students to save the revenue that colleges need. Who gives a shit? Get rid of those colleges, right? If you're
the college industrial complex, just needs to be brought down.
Thank you. So you're lining up what I'm going to say here. So my fear is that we lose the midterms because Republicans won't show up. It is going to be really hard for me because I'm going to sit there and I'm going to pull the lever. And I'm going to say, at this point, am I just pulling the lever for the less of two evils? I'm not pulling the lever with pride anymore because I mean, there's only so much you can say. Well, at least we don't have Kamala. I mean, if I were to take what Trump has done in the last 3 weeks between the Laura Ingraham interview about the Chinese students and the H-1B visas, meeting with a freaking jihadi that had a $10 million cap on his head, rolling out the freaking state dinner for the Saudi prince who won't apologize for 9/11, sitting down and basically, I don't know, I thought he was going to start making out with Ma'am Danny. I sit here and I say to myself, if I were to list those things and said, can you believe Obama did this? People would be like, he's a freaking Muslim. He's a freaking traitor. I hate that guy. We should be hanging him. You say Trump did it and people are like, well, you got to keep your enemies closer. And that's the fringe. The other people are saying, you know what? I can't even trust Trump. I'm not showing up. So my concern is that we lose because people don't show up in large numbers. And then what happens is people will say, well, it was fixed. We lost the election because they cheat. And I thought, and I'm going into a long rant here, but I thought that one of the things we were going to get this go round was Doge. And now that's gone. And we were going to see like a whole panel. I want you guys. I want freaking Russ on the freaking Trump team coming up with one page after the next to show me 2020 was stolen. I don't ever see anything about that. Why, Russ? Why?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, for me personally, I'm always of the mind, like, I'm not going to get 100% of what I want. So if I get 51%, I'm there, right? And so, there's a lot of things that he's done that maybe, I wouldn't have done, or, not up there, or up there with what I would prefer. But, I mean, we've got this weird thing going on globally, and this isn't my area of expertise, but it's something I follow closely, is, you have the US-led world going on where you have this sort of shifting where it's a bipolar world. And so, like, there's so many big structural changes going on in the world that I personally trust him and give him more leeway than probably I would have done anybody, perhaps, because, I mean, we have to deal with the Saudis. I mean, like, it's terrible, and I'm not trying to dismiss it or any of that, but I mean, I share the same feeling. Like, we had a jihadi in the White House, right? Like, it's crazy, but there are big structural issues going on that we're dealing with national or internationally that, I guess I just give him more leeway than I would, because everything you say, I sort of agree with. But in terms of the whole election, I mean, what we did in 2020 is, like, I could not prove everything that was being alleged certainly in the 5-day window or 2-week window when they were challenging the elections. But what we started doing from a Judicial Watch standpoint is we started finding the issues we could attack, right? And sometimes you can't get the big thing you want, like to stop all this universal mail balloting, because it's just terrible. It's very much undermines the confidence of the election. No other country does it. This idea that the most important election integrity provision in the history of mankind is just making people go to the poll site. And so what we did was we started focusing on things we could attack. And one thing that we found that was a good idea in 2020, but nobody really did well, was this idea of allowing ballots to come in after Election Day. And so that's the big project that we've been working on with some of our clients over the last 4 years. And we filed suits in Illinois and California and Mississippi, and we've had a pretty good amount of success with that. And so now we will have the Supreme Court this March taking one of our cases. We won a case in Mississippi that stopped ballots coming in late. Mississippi has appealed. And so we won that case. And so we will hopefully have an answer this March as to why ballots can come in days and weeks after election. We're very optimistic that we're going to get a favorable ruling. It will be close. In terms of, like, the turnout and how all that's going to work out, like, everything you say, I see, and the polling is unnerving, especially where we were 6 months ago. And you've had the government shutdown that's taken hits, and you've had inflation hasn't quite come down, and we need to get rates down, and all these sort of big market issues. I think, it's still a long time between now and next year in terms. So I don't, I personally am not panicking, but I see what everyone's worried about. It's just, we have basically 12 months to the next election, 11 months to the next election. That's a lifetime. Like, where were we 4 months ago versus where we are now? So where will we be in 4 or 5 months from now?
Chris?
Yeah, I echo everything Russ says. He's right. He knows the substance incredibly well. From the political side of it, having worked on the Trump campaign and at the RNC and on the Republican side, the reason we don't have what President Trump was pushing is because of Republicans. Now, that's annoying and frustrating, but it's also helpful in the sense that the Republican voters and the Republican side, we have some control over it, right? They like to blame the Democrats, but it's not the Democrats. We have a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican Supreme Court, a Republican in the White House, a majority of Republican governors, a majority of Republican AGs, a majority of Republican House and Senate across at the state levels. The reason we don't have the election reform that we've wanted is because Republicans aren't doing it. It's not Donald Trump. He's talking about putting out this EO on elections, which is, okay, that's fine, but that's not the way the law works. The law elections aren't run by EO, they're run by statute. And so our House and Senate, which are Republican, could do this, and they're choosing not to do this. Now, there's probably
why?
Yeah. There's probably a few different reasons, and I don't know everybody's individual reason, but the big ones that I would assume is Republicans cheat too. I know we like to pretend like we don't, but they do. And so they don't want to change the system that they used to get into office. The really frustrating part of that is they never cheat as well as Democrats. They just don't. And so where those that have won, those Republicans that have won, they're winning in red districts, where Democrats are also winning in purple districts where a Republican really truly should be winning, but Democrats are cheating and Republicans aren't pushing back because they're like, well, at least it's not my district. And so that goes back to what I was ranting about earlier on. It's like, we're so freaking impotent. I don't even want to say we I have conservative values. I'm not, the Republican Party anymore, but it's these really impotent Republicans, which I would say is everybody except Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is the one that kind of revived the Republican side a little bit. And he's being advised by all of these people. A lot of these people are in his administration. And so he can only do what he can do. Like for the pardons, he issued that pardon. I was on that list of all the people that he pardoned. It's great. Thank you. I appreciate that he did it. It has zero impact on my case. But it's the only thing he as the president can do. So he's trying to do what he can do. What really should be happening is the Department of Justice should be intervening and saying, hey, this is actually a federal issue. But DOJ is sitting on their rear end doing nothing in a lot of ways. And so so that's, I think it's Republicans.
Trump's got a lot of fight. Like, that's the amazing thing about him. Like, if I had 94 counts and indictments against me, I'd probably be hunkered in the corner somewhere, and he's just waking up and thriving on it. Like, he's got enough fight for everybody, but it seems to be a lot of these people in the House and honestly the Senate, right? The Senate is subject to its calendar. It's only got so much bandwidth of things it can put on. And then people are nitpicking about all this other stuff. And there are a lot of lawyers that are very much process oriented. And they don't really understand that they're focused on the process and not actually the results. And they're not really fighting as much as they should be. That's just it. They're nitpicking and all that. The Epstein thing is a horrific thing. Judicial Watch has been suing over the files. We've been waiting on the files. We're happy. We'll still be waiting on the files till they're released and suing over it. But, this suddenly has become a Trump issue is, it's sort of strange to me because, if they had the stuff on him about Epstein, and then they wouldn't have gone to Fulton County to indict him. Right? Why would you go to Fulton County to indict him if you have the goods on him in D.C.? It's so much easier to destroy him in D.C. than Fulton County. And so they obviously didn't have anything, but it's just weird that so much of the oxygen is being taken up by that. And it's not by accident.
Well, I just a couple of days ago on X, Elon Musk was putting out, hey, where's voter ID laws? Where's anybody pushing for that? And so I think what I'll say here sort of sizes up a lot of folks. I know a lot of folks who listen to my show and support me. You want to support Trump. And I agree with you, fight. But sometimes if you're fighting the wrong person or you're fighting a ghost, you get nowhere. And so I feel, and I'm not giving him the pass. If there's one thing that Republican, or I shouldn't even say Republican, if there's Trump voter derangement syndrome where they get lost into it, they always want to give him a pass. And I understand because he's gotten his ass kicked so many times in terms of they tried to take his business, they tried to take his money, they tried to take his reputation, they tried to take his life. So I get it. They want to defend him, and I do too. At the same time as when I watch him putting his energy into stuff that just doesn't matter, or sitting there and playing nice with people who would like to see him dead, forget about out of office, I just sit there and I scratch my head, and it starts to get really hard to defend him. Like, if I was Trump, I would say I am not doing anything else until somebody comes in here and starts to explain to me what we could do for voter ID. I mean, why, Russ, can't we get voter ID somehow, some way into the legal system to where we get what sounds reasonable? Every human being says, well, I got to show my license to buy a bottle of wine, but I don't have to show my license to vote? What the hell?
I mean, the best way to describe it, I guess, is for election integrity, there's sort of two ways to do it, right? The litigation standpoint, which is what we do. And for litigation, you really can just enforce the laws that are on the books or make sure they're interpreted the right way, right? And if you want a new law on the books, you got to go through the Congress or the state legislators. I think the short answer is you don't get 60 votes in the Senate. And so if you want voter ID, you either gotta just forego the filibuster. I sort of go back and forth on that as a personal matter, because I know the Democrats are going to do it at some point. It's just maybe the Republicans should just go ahead and do it now, because I don't think people really appreciate how close we were in 2021 with House Bill 1 to destroying the country. It can't be understated enough. If y'all recall, that was, I can't remember what the act's name, but it was House Bill 1. It was the nationwide election law that the Democrats were 2 votes from getting in the Senate, and they would have required mandatory nationwide all-mail balloting. So every close seat would have gone Democrat. They would have had redistricting run out of DC. They would have had mandatory racial districts. I don't think people can really fathom the world it would look like if House Bill 1 had passed and how close we were to that. And thankfully, we had 2 Democrats that held out and didn't destroy the filibuster. And so, voter ID is important, but what really keeps me up at night is the idea that House Bill 1 will come back and that we won't have Democrats that'll hold out, and you'll have that trifecta in the federal government where the Democrats will shove it through, and suddenly every state has all mail balloting, and it's basically a ballot chase program run by organizations funded by places like Gates and Soros. And at that point, you can overturn a number of elections with $5 million. Getting people to go chase ballots. It's not a lot.
I just want to confirm something from you. So when they do the congressional seats and they do the census, illegal aliens are counted in that census. Am I right? So is it that
they're counted in the apportionment, right? They're counted in like how many seats California get, but they're not counted within the district in terms of vote support.
Okay. So in some cases it hurts, but not. Is it as significant as people think it is? Because I hear all the time about how illegals are voting, and I can't see how the illegals are swaying elections one way or the other. I see that more as impactful on Congress and representation.
I don't think you need to worry about whether or not they're voting. I worry about it, but the point being is they're getting allocated seats in California for that. Now, Texas probably gets a few too, to be fair. But what people have sort of glossed over is that after the 2020 census, the inspector general for the census admitted there was a six seat error, meaning 3 blue states got an extra seat and 3 red states lost seats they were supposed to get. And so that's a 6-vote swing. What could Speaker Johnson do with an extra 6 votes in the House, right? We wouldn't be fighting with some of the congressmen that are, have been traditionally our friends, Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? What everyone feels about them. Like, sometimes people just need to let it out. And if you got 8 extra votes, 2 of them can get mad and stomp their feet and everyone can pass it. He's got a razor thin margin. What would he be able to do if he had those 6 seats right now? And so, in terms of swaying elections, yes, they're participating. Christina, what do you think? I mean, you've seen it.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I'd be curious what Mike Johnson can get done anyway. But yeah, I do think I agree with you. I'm less concerned about the illegals actually voting. I'm more concerned about mail-in ballots because to the extent that illegals are voting, they're really just names filling in on mail-in ballots. So I think the bigger issue is mail-in ballots. Although,
I mean,
the
registering is the problem because they create that creates the bullet that somebody can vote falsely for. So it's the registration is the biggest problem.
Yeah, packing the registration list, which Judicial Watch has been very good about suing to get rid of, to clean up the voter registrations, which is so important for the mail-in ballots. But yeah, the real issue I think is mail-in ballots, and to be clear, what people forget is you're already supposed to show ID to vote. The reason people aren't showing ID or the way states are getting around it is they're reinterpreting the law. Misinterpreting the law, right? But you're already supposed to be a citizen to vote. You're already supposed to be showing ID, and then the states are just saying, "Oh, well, we interpret it differently." So, I mean, on one hand, it's like, yeah, if Congress would just write a very simple one-page bill of, you need ID, you have to be a U.S. citizen, all of the stuff that's already on the books that's being misused, they could do that. But on the other hand, it's like the states are just choosing to not follow the law. So maybe, to the extent, I obviously want that election reform passed that President Trump has put out or is in the process of putting out as an EO. But it kind of doesn't matter because the states are just doing whatever the states are doing anyway. Is that right, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, and the voter ID honestly is a litmus test. Like if anybody is against voter ID, you should not take seriously any of their other opinions, right? Like if you don't think people should show a voter ID, then I don't really care about what you say about anything else, right? It's like, so
let me take something that both of you, because Russ, you specialize in election integrity and things election, and Chris, you are. Do you mind me calling you Chris?
That's actually what my family calls me. I love it.
Okay, because my best friend's wife is Christina, and so we call it Chris.
I love
it. And you obviously, from a national security standpoint, I think I have something to where the expertise that you guys present can come together as one. So it's going to take me a couple of minutes to present this. I lived 9/11. I'm one of the people who you see running from the buildings. So I'll be the first one to say that I have a tremendous bias against Islam and Muslim extremism. And for me personally, and you don't have to agree with me or not, but I don't see any difference between the Muslim who says I'm peaceful and the Muslim who says I want to cut your head off, because they still follow that same book called the Quran. And if you look at the writings of the Quran, it's just bad. I mean, I could go down whether it's the way they treat women, the way they would treat gays, civil jihad, taqiyya, whatever it is you want to talk about, it's just bad. And so if you want to be a Muslim and practice that kind of stuff, there are lots of countries for that. This country was not based on that sort of thing. At the same time, as I understand, you have the freedom of religion. So it is sort of a catch-22, right? So I don't want to walk through the street and see 50 men in the middle of the street, or I should say in a parking lot, because they're not blocking the cars going by, doing their 5 calls to prayer every day. It's just not what I want. Now, I understand it's protected by the law. So I'm sort of like, you've got this give and take. But when I see that in the last election, we had, I think it was 76 Muslims who ran for office and more than 42 won. I think it was 76, 42 won. And it was everything from mayor to lieutenant governor to school board, what have you. I know that the Muslim Brotherhood has a doctrine that says we are going to take over from within. And every single last part of what they say they're going to take over from within is working. They got their fingers in the government. They got their fingers in education, in business, and in media. What they're doing at the college level and sending millions and billions of dollars, I feel sometimes like I'm the only person who sees this. And when I post something on Facebook, you know what everybody says to me? Did you try to tell Trump? And I'm saying to myself, if Trump and his administration don't know the threats like I know the threats, they shouldn't be in office. And then I see that he, because he's getting pressure from some of the biggest names on X about pushing for the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood being a terror organization. And he signs an executive order that's like the equivalent of me saying Van Halen's not allowed to play anymore in the United States. Well, they're not a group anymore. What are you talking about? He puts it into Lebanon and Jordan, where in Egypt, where they're defunct at this point. He doesn't go where it needs to be gone. Qatar, Turkey. And so it's basically nothing. And so I sit here and I say to myself, wow, what I see happening slowly but surely is that there is a takeover from within. We are doing nothing to stop it. And when we do try to do something to stop it through an executive order, it's basically useless. What's your take on this? Because we just watched 3 guys here in Florida. I don't agree with what they did in terms of how they did it, but there was a whole bunch of guys doing prayer in the middle of the freaking parking lot. They go up and they start, countering that with Jesus is king. Then they're making jokes about eating bacon. These 3 guys are now on felony charges that could land them in jail for basically just being punks through First Amendment right. I mean, so explain this to me, because people are up in arms. They don't understand where things are going, whether it's the president hugging and kissing everybody who it seems to be Muslim, taking free planes from Qatar, an executive order that's meaningless. We don't get it. We don't understand it. We don't want to be racists, but at the same time, we want our country the way our country was founded.
Yeah, I don't disagree with everything you're saying. Unfortunately, I think whether it's the issues that you're referring to, which I think you laid them out there well, or it's the election issues, or maybe immigration, certainly criminal justice. We're seeing this come out of the Department of Justice, where there's one way the Department of Justice could defang itself to ensure that it's never weaponized again, to ensure that American citizens don't have to fear the federal government coming after them for eating bacon or for being punks, as you laid out. And they're not doing it. We're not seeing that. They're targeting, they're going around the periphery. The way, what you said that really resonates with the issues that I'm facing in my own life is this administration, whether it's coming from President Trump, I'm maybe, but I certainly think it's coming from members of his administration. They're going around the periphery of the issues without actually gutting the actual issue. So like the Department of Justice is the natural example for me because it's something I face, but they're going after Comey and Letitia James and John Bolton, the low-hanging fruit who nobody's coming to help. Nobody cares about John Bolton. Nobody cares about Letitia James. Nobody cares about Comey. No one's coming to support them. But it looks like they're targeting Donald Trump's political opponents, when in reality, the real damage that the Department of Justice did, and this was what I was really hoping. I mentioned it in my book. I've got a book out. I was President Trump's attorney on site for the Mar-a-Lago raid. I'm currently a criminal defendant in Arizona, and I'm in the middle of the criminal lawfare. And
explain why you're a criminal defendant.
So I volunteered to help Rudy Giuliani post 2020. So I worked with Rudy post 2020 and helped with the litigation. I got roped into the alternate electors criminal prosecution, despite the fact I had nothing to do with the alternate electors. And I don't think they committed any crimes either. I'm not knocking them. I just didn't have anything to do with it. But because I was, according to the indictment, I'm closely associated with Rudy Giuliani, which is true. I also don't think that's a crime, but that's what I'm indicted for, 9 felonies. So we're still fighting that. Our indictment has been thrown out, but just on Friday, actually, just a couple days ago, Chris Mays, the Arizona Attorney General, appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court. She's dragging it out because the indictment was thrown out. We're trying to get this case closed. That's a whole mess. We can go into it as much as you're interested in, but the lawfare is it's beyond comprehension. But this Department of Justice has an opportunity to do something about that, to bring civil rights issues, or to not necessarily further the criminal prosecution, but to shrink the Department of Justice, shrink the FBI, make it very, very difficult for any administration that comes in afterwards to repeat, not just, so I was our criminal prosecutions are part of all the Arctic frost stuff that's going on. However, you have all the January 6th stuff. I also got called before the January 6th committee and, was subpoenaed surrounding all Jack Smith's J6 stuff. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars in legal fees because I was in the area, because I know Rudy, because, I'm wrongly associated with the political candidate that they don't like. That has to stop. It's not sustainable as a country because Americans are going to fear being part of the political process, which is the antithesis of what we stand for. So what I was hoping to see from the Department of Justice was them basically cut DOJ off at the knees and cripple their ability to do another J6 hoax. We're going to round up thousands of Americans, throw them in jail on fake charges, fake trials. They lied. They didn't disclose Brady evidence. They had people lying on the stand. Those convictions that everybody likes to cite are fake. They're completely manufactured. That has to stop. And as far as I can see, nothing's being done about it. So I don't have a great answer to the point you're making, other than I see the exact same thing in the area that I'm focused on. It's this dancing around the periphery without getting to the nucleus. And that's what we need as Americans.
Well, your take on that, Russ?
I mean, that's why the loss of Charlie Kirk is so, profound, right? I mean, Charlie Kirk had a great disposition, and he was espousing Western ideals and this, traditional family notions, and did it in a way that was palatable to some people that maybe would always be off put by that message. People praying in public, as long as they're not interrupting traffic and staying out of my way, I'm fine with it. I wouldn't ordinarily go up and harass them or anything like that. I'm not familiar with that anecdote. But I mean, for me, it's you have this sort of USAID industrial complex. I keep hating to go back to that, but Trump has been, he's attacked some things and then really defanged some things. And so it'll be interesting to me to see how much the cutback in funding is going to limit all these, NGO organizations that have been recycling money back to promote all these sort of anti-Western ideals, groups, and bring these, people that don't want to assimilate into the American culture, that don't want to accept American values. And so, it doesn't take a lot of money for them to really do that. And so I think cutting off USAID may have some good long-term effects. I think we're not really sure yet how much it will have. But, I think a lot of people are just useful idiots, right? They don't want to be confrontational because it's hard to be the heavy, right? It's hard to say, you really should try to assimilate more or anything like that, because that's, people have been taught to be nice, right? And it's reached a point. I mean, look at London, look at all the, the reports you're hearing from the capitals of Europe, right? And what's the one capital of Europe, or the two places in Europe that is not really happening? Hungary and Poland. And look how much Hungary's been attacked, right? And then look at, what the Biden administration did to try to influence the election in Poland, right? The lone holdouts were attacked by our State Department, right? Or undermined, or however you want to phrase it. And so, there's a concerted effort. There's money involved because those people vote one way. And if you can defang the American people, you've neutered it more than anybody could have done in 250 years, right?
Well, one of the reasons, go back to this little case that's going on right now. And again, if you didn't hear about it, I'll repeat. Imagine 12 guys sitting, I think it was the University of South Florida. And you got 12 Muslim guys. They're in a parking lot. They've got their prayer rugs. They're doing their prayers. 3 guys go on a live stream. 3 guys, who look like me, maybe a little bit younger. And they start just yelling out loud, Jesus is king. Jesus is king, while these guys are doing their prayers to Allah. Is it confrontational? It is. But it's no different than when people are wearing their MAGA hat online to go into a Trump rally, and they got blue-haired crazies or people with masks on, Antifa, screaming in their face that you are a Nazi, you are a scumbag, you're a fascist, and there's nothing you could do about it because ultimately they're not touching you, but they're doing their First Amendment right. So it's sort of the same thing.
It hardly seems criminal, right? That's the problem, right? They're criminalizing, lack of decorum, right? I mean, like,
yeah, you're being,
and it's
you're being
only
punished
one,
for being
it's only
a punk.
one way. It's only one way it's happening. Yeah.
So the issue is, even when they turn around and they take the bacon and they're saying, "Hey, you guys like bacon? It's tasty," or whatever. It's a tasteless act, right? But I understand why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're frustrated, and they don't want that in their backyard. That's a different topic. But when you target the guys who do the bacon and the Jesus call, and you don't target the blue hair and the Antifa mask, people feel as if it's a one-way street. And they say, why aren't the Republicans like, where's Ron DeSantis on this? I haven't heard from him in 2 days. But if it were the other way, Newsom would be on the teleprompter right away, reading about how it is that, the fascists and the Trump
they'd be
people are the most
debanked.
dangerous people.
I mean, they'd be debanked, deplatformed. I mean, everything.
Absolutely. So people are sitting here and they're saying, whoa, what's going on? Now, what I personally think what's going on, I think that you have groups like the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, and they sit there and say, what we're going to do is we're going to use the legal system against these people. And so what they do is they take one of the guys who was doing the prayers, and he goes on TV and he starts crying about the fact. I mean, literally, it's the worst fake job ever, but he's crying. I had to relive the bacon part. I mean, it was hysterical. But because the way he was crying about it was so fake. And so what happens? They go and they arrest these 3 guys and going to hit them with the felonies. Why? Because they don't want you, or me to do the repeat thing. Because we sit there and say, hey, man, if we see Muslim people in the street, just look the other way because you're going to wind up getting hit with a felony. It's Chris, it's the same reason why they're doing to you what they're doing to you.
No, that's exactly right. And what I don't think... I don't want to keep saying this administration because I keep going back to the Department of Justice, although they're a huge part of it, but also the Republicans that are in office right now. The conservatives, or I can't call them conservatives, the Republicans that are in office right now don't understand they're sitting on the bullseye. They themselves are the targets. They're just in power right now, so they're not being targeted. The second Democrats get back into power, they're all going to jail. I don't care if you're like, well, I didn't have anything to do with anything. Neither did I. I got indicted on 9 felonies. I've been fighting it for almost 2 years at this point. I've been fighting civil litigation for 4 years, going all the way back to early 2021, 9 different subpoenas. I had nothing to do with anything. I was a reporter at the time covering the story, and I got indicted and I got sued and I got subpoenaed, all of this. I hate using names because I'm not wishing it on anybody, but the Pam Bondis, the Todd Blanches, the people that are sitting in positions of power who are refusing to shut this type of weaponization down. Harmeet Dillon, she's the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. If you don't address this, they're coming for you. And I know people love to be arrogant and look back at 2020. And this just is mind-blowing to me. But they can look at 2020 and look at Rudy Giuliani, who's one of the most famous, well-respected, well-known attorneys in this country. They can look at Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, who's a constitutional scholar, argued before the Supreme Court many times, and Jeff Clark, same thing. They can look at those guys and go, and you might think I'm lying when I say this. I've had dozens of attorneys say this to me. Yeah, well, if I had been in that position, it would be different. You genuinely think you would have handled the situation better than Rudy Giuliani? Are you crazy? The guy knows politics. The guy knows political warfare better than anybody. He's a smart attorney. He's the guy that used RICO to take down the mob. And you think you know it better, but that is genuinely the attitude that they have. They genuinely think they're smarter, they're better, they're more capable. And the problem is because they believe that, they don't recognize that they are the targets. And so conservatives sit back and say, okay, well, the second Democrats get another chance at this, they're coming for us. They're not going to come for me again. They've already taken me out. I'm not in the admin anymore. I'm not on TV. I'm not doing the things that I was doing before because I'm fighting all my legal cases. So they're not coming for me again. They're coming for you. And
they haven't stopped it.
Find out the easy way or the hard way. And I don't want to be right about this. I hope, like Russ said earlier, we have a year before this happens, but
the public wants action, right? And the Republicans need to show they can govern. And what Christina's pointing out is like they may have delayed things, but the threat from House Bill 1 and all these other things, they're just temporarily suspended till Joe Manchin, so they can finally get somebody get that seat, get that vote that Joe Manchin held from them, right?
Oh, sorry, Russ.
No, please go ahead.
Very excited about what you're saying. And yes, and that's right. And the reason why they're targeting elections so much, like you kind of think like, okay, yeah, elections are important and that's how you get power, whatever. But the reason why the elections and the weaponization of the criminal justice system go hand in hand is because elections are how you stop the abuse of the justice system. If you don't like what's going on with the justice system, you replace the elected leaders who are in control of it. But if they have captured our elections and we can no longer replace them, we can't do anything about the fact that they're using the justice system to throw us all in prison. And that's what Republicans are just, they're either playing Pollyanna or they're part of the problem. And I've been in this business in the election business for 6 years at this point, which Russ has much more time in it than I do. But for the last 6 years, I am now getting to the point where I'm like, oh no, they're actually complicit in it. This isn't like, oh, they're just stupid ignorant. They are actually part of the problem.
I mean, I see it a little differently in the sense that it's just hard, right? And so, people go away from hard stuff. Like this stuff, not to toot our own horn, we've been grinding for 4 years to get the Supreme Court to finally answer why ballots can be cast after Election Day. We lost everything for 3 years, right? I mean, like any other group that didn't have the support of its members like Judicial Watch, that didn't have the support of its leadership would have been like, Russ, get out of here. We're done with this. This is just something that you lost. And, I kept joking that I was going to keep losing till either the Supreme Court decided to hear it or took notice or Tom fired me, right? Because that's the way it was. And it's, election reform is hard work, and so, and then you have a lot of people nitpicking at different things. And it's like the Republicans need to take action because the Trump coalition is a weird coalition for Republicans. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. It's just not the traditional coalition of Republicans, right? It's these libertarians, the RFK guys, the blue collar people that never show up to vote except for when Trump's on the ballot. Like they've got this small window to do stuff. And if they fiddle around and don't do anything, those people are not coming back and the coalition's not going to work. And so they have to show they can act. And that's exactly what Christina and Dennis, you're talking about, right? They have to do something and not be bogged down in the process. But,
Russ, there is a part of me, and then I'm going to ask you guys one last question and then we'll wrap this up. You've both been great. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. There is a deep part of me that thinks, and I won't name names, but you could guess them yourself. I don't think the Republican Party wants Trump. I don't think they ever wanted him to begin with. I think they all realized that the best way to do this, I mean, I hate this saying because everybody uses it all the time as an excuse for Trump being nice and dancing with Mamdani, but, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I think that the Republican Party has figured that statement out and said, we've just got to hold our breath and, squeeze our nose and just get through this Trump era. The biggest objective that you've got at this point as a Republican lawmaker, whether you're in the Senate or in the Congress or even the DOJ or FBI, wherever it is that you use, I just don't want to wind up on his Truth Social. I mean, I think that's what people will just do. They go through the day and say, let me not be targeted by Trump on a bad tweet. And if we could just get past this time, we get rid of him and we could get back to business as usual. That's what I think he's up against. And I think what happens to Trump is that if he has an Achilles heel, it's his ego in the sense that he loves to be loved. Mm-hmm. He wants to be praised. And so if you give him enough praise and you say, look, I never really meant to call you a Nazi. I really think you're amazing. He brings you in and then he can't see the forest from the trees anymore. I personally believe that the Republicans don't do the things that we're talking about today, Ross, talking about Chris. I think they stay on their hands because they really want to see his era and they want to see the MAGA movement just die out. And I believe that's what that is. Last word goes to you, both of you, and you can talk about whatever it is you want, about 2 minutes each. And please, at the end of when you're done, tell people how they can follow you in addition to just going to Judicial Watch.
I'll jump in on that one. I 100% agree with you. I think the Republicans have never wanted Trump in power. That's why we had the fiasco of 2016, and it has never changed. What Republicans or the Republican establishment doesn't understand is they think, oh, this MAGA movement, this big wave that came in 2024 will stay with us without Donald Trump. And it will not. They are going, not only will it not stay with them, it will not support them, it will turn against them. And the American people gave Republicans, excuse me, not conservatives, they gave Republicans this mandate of, we hate everything that the Biden administration did. We hate everything that has been happening over the last 5 years. We want you to change it. And they're not changing it. And so when when the next election rolls around, or, the next time the American people actually have a chance to cast their vote, regardless of whether it's a presidential election or midterms or local, they're not going to show up for Republicans because they hate what the Republicans are doing or not doing right now. So I completely agree. I think your analysis is spot on. And I would point out that the Achilles heel of the establishment Republican is that that's exactly what they think. And they don't recognize that the threat to that is the American people don't support them. They do not support them, and they're not going to continue to support them. And so their opportunity to make these changes is going away, and it is going to cost our country. I'm sorry, I could talk about this for another hour. I love this topic. I think it's so important. So thanks for giving me a chance so much to talk about it. My name is Christina Bobb. You can find me on Instagram, X. I wrote a book. President Trump did the foreword for it. It's called Defiant: Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. I was his custodian of records for Mar-a-Lago, and I was the representative on site during the raid. And then, of course, I got sucked into all of the criminal charges and conspiracies. I had 9 cases against me in 3 years. I give you all the emails, the receipts, everything's in there. So please check it out. And thanks for giving me some time today.
You got it. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, Dennis, I agree. I mean, I think from my framework, you have sort of the old guard Republicans and sort of the MAGA Republicans. And, the old guard is just trying to hold their nose and live through it. And then you have the MAGA Republicans. I mean, just last week with the federal court in Texas, it threw out that enjoined that redistricting map. You had a Trump judge siding with a liberal judge to strike down the map, while you had a Reagan judge forcefully fighting, and it's one of the most vitriolic dissents, raging at sort of the overreach of the court on that redistricting plan by a Reagan judge. And so it is a good framework to talk about the old guard and the new guard, but sometimes it doesn't always help. But I completely agree. They're just trying to live through the moment. What they don't realize is that, this old guard, the sort of people that are sort of tepid, they're going to live through the Trump moment and go back to getting 40% vote, which is not how you win a national election, right? It's how you just be controlled dissent in the Congress, right? So they need to get on board. The American public is sick of prices going up. They're sick of overprinting. They're sick of endless debt, right? They see the writing on the wall. Nobody conducts their house the way American government conducts its government, right? And so they want that fixed, and they want action, right? And if the Republicans don't get together and get some stuff fixed, they're going to have a real problem. And the analog on the other side, when it swings back, is obviously worse. And so, I hope somebody hear this and will do something about it. And, and understand that, in the White House, the first 4 or 5 months were great. And then they're getting bogged down with all the sideshows from the media and the international stuff. And I hope that they'll go back to dealing with the sort of the hot button issues that people in flyover country care about. That's where I live. People don't care about a lot of the things that goes on in DC. They just want to make groceries. They don't even need them to go down. They want them to stop going up, right? And Trump is trying to work on that. He's trying to deal with the Federal Reserve, but we have to get the money back straightened out. And in terms of elections, we're a long way between now and next election. But if the Republicans can't show that they can govern, they will lose. The American people want action, and I hope that they will get that action they thought they were voting for last November. Thank you, Dennis, so much for having me. Again, I'm Russell Nobile, senior attorney at Judicial Watch. Probably the best way to find me is on Twitter, or X, I guess, as they're calling it now. My user handle is @RussellNobile, Nobile.
I want to say thank you to both of you. I want to say thank you to Judicial Watch. Say hello to Tom. Ask him if he'll send me his arm workout. And that's that. Both of you enjoy the rest of your day. I appreciate it in a big way.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, that's it for us. I appreciate you in a big way. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you hitting the share button. If you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're on X, you're on Rumble, wherever it is, you're on a platform watching this or listening to this, make sure you share it. Let people listen to it. I think the information you got today was priceless, to be quite honest with you. And if you are Team DML and you've got the DML News app, well then, just thank you so much for your ongoing support. And I'll keep on bringing you as deep interviews with great people as I possibly can. With that being said, make sure that you give Christina Bobb a look, and make sure you give Russell Nobile a look. I mean, these people are working hard, they're fighting hard, and when you just go and you give them a follow, it costs you nothing, it takes no time, but it shows that you have some support for them. As for me, well, listen, God willing, I'll be back with you again tomorrow. Until that happens, may God bless you, your family, our troops, Judicial Watch, and our president. We'll talk to you soon.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch Podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML.